Welcome to the Real Crime Diary Daily Dose of Crime. Today, on World Day Against the Death Penalty, we're diving into the controversial topic of capital punishment. What happens when justice and morality collide in the most extreme way? It's a question that has divided nations, sparked heated debates, and challenged our very notions of right and wrong. As we delve into this complex issue, we'll explore recent cases, hear from experts, and examine the global landscape of the death penalty. Prepare yourself for a journey into the heart of one of the most contentious topics in criminal justice. The death penalty remains a contentious issue in the United States, with recent events highlighting its ongoing practice. Just last week, we witnessed a shocking series of 5 executions carried out in the span of 7 days. These executions took place in Missouri, South Carolina, Texas, Oklahoma, and Alabama, demonstrating that capital punishment is still very much alive in parts of the country. Currently, 21 states are actively carrying out executions, while 27 still have capital punishment laws on the books. However, there's a growing trend towards abolition. 6 states, including Ohio, have paused executions through official or unofficial moratoriums. This shift away from the death penalty is driven by several factors. Public support for capital punishment is declining nationwide, with more Americans favoring alternatives like life imprisonment without parole. Concerns about wrongful convictions, racial bias, and the high costs associated with death penalty cases are also fueling the movement towards abolition. Despite this trend, some states remain committed to the practice, even exploring new methods of execution. It's a landscape in flux, with the debate between justice, morality, and human rights continuing to shape the future of capital punishment in America. Now let's turn our attention to Ohio, where the death penalty debate is reaching a critical point. Governor Mike DeWine has put a pause on executions, not due to moral concerns, but because of practical issues. Pharmaceutical companies are threatening to cut off all their products to states using them for lethal injections. This has created an unofficial moratorium, but the law remains on the books. Recent polling shows that 56% of Ohioans support replacing the death penalty with life without parole. This shift in public opinion is backed by some stark statistics. 11 people have been exonerated from Ohio's death row. 11 innocent lives nearly lost to a flawed system. The racial disparity is impossible to ignore. Over half of Ohio's death row inmates are black, despite making up only about 13% of the state's population. This reflects the troubling legacy of racism in our criminal justice system. Geography also plays a role. Most death sentences come from just a handful of Ohio counties, highlighting the arbitrary nature of capital punishment. Then there's the cost. Death penalty cases can run up to $3 million more than life imprisonment cases. With Ohio's current death row population, that's potentially hundreds of millions in additional costs to taxpayers. Supporters argue that the death penalty provides justice for victims' families. But many of these families report being re-traumatized by drawn-out capital cases and don't want the death penalty pursued. As Ohio grapples with these issues, the debate continues. Should the state push to resume executions or join the growing movement towards abolition? Now let's turn our attention to the human cost of capital punishment. To truly understand this, we need to hear from those who have witnessed its impact firsthand. One such person is Sister Helen Prejean, a Catholic nun who has been advocating against the death penalty for over 3 decades. Sister Prejean's journey began in 1982 when she started corresponding with a death row inmate. What she thought would be a simple exchange of letters turned into a life-changing experience. She ended up accompanying Patrick Sonnier, a man convicted of murder, through his final hours before execution in 1984. This experience, as Sister Prejean describes it, set her soul on fire. She witnessed firsthand the torturous last hours of a man's life, a secret ritual hidden from public view. It was this realization that spurred her into action, determined to educate people about the reality of capital punishment. But what about the families of the victims? Contrary to popular belief, many find that executions don't bring the closure or justice they seek. In fact, the lengthy process, which averages 17 years from sentencing to execution, often prolongs their pain and suffering. Sister Prejean argues that true justice isn't about punishment or causing pain. It's about fairness, healing, and giving people their due when a community has been hurt. The current system, she contends, fails to achieve this, instead perpetuating a cycle of violence. As we consider the human cost of capital punishment, we're forced to confront uncomfortable questions. Is this truly justice? Or are we, as a society, simply engaging in legalized vengeance? The answers aren't simple, but they're crucial as we continue to grapple with this complex issue. Now let's shift our focus to the international stage and examine how the rest of the world views capital punishment. The European Union and the Council of Europe have taken a strong stance against the death penalty. They've reaffirmed their opposition to it in all cases and under all circumstances, calling it an inhuman and degrading treatment that denies human dignity. In fact, more than 2/3 of all countries worldwide have abolished the death penalty in law or in practice. Last year saw the lowest number of countries carrying out executions on record. This global trend towards abolition is a stark contrast to the situation in the United States. While many U.S. states have moved away from capital punishment, the country as a whole remains one of the few developed nations that still practices it. In 2023, the U.S. ranked among the top 5 countries with the highest number of executions, alongside China, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Somalia. This puts the United States in a unique and controversial position among its Western allies. While Europe pushes for global abolition, the U.S. continues to grapple with this issue state by state, case by case. It's a reminder of how deeply rooted the death penalty is in American justice system and culture, and how challenging the path to abolition can be. Now let's dive into the heart of the death penalty debate: the clash between deterrence and human rights. Proponents of capital punishment often argue that it serves as a powerful deterrent to violent crime. They claim that the threat of execution prevents potential murderers from carrying out their plans. But does the evidence support this view? Studies have shown mixed results. Some researchers argue that the death penalty has little to no effect on crime rates. In fact, states without the death penalty often have lower murder rates than those that still practice it. Sister Helen Prejean, whom we heard from earlier, points out that violent crime is more closely related to socioeconomic factors than the presence or absence of capital punishment. On the other hand, supporters of the death penalty argue that it's not just about deterrence, but also about justice and closure for victims' families. They believe that certain crimes are so heinous that execution is the only appropriate response. But this is where human rights concerns come into play. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights emphasizes the right to life and protection from cruel, inhuman, or degrading punishment. Critics argue that the death penalty violates these fundamental principles, regardless of the crime committed. Moreover, the irreversible nature of execution raises serious concerns. With over 200 death row inmates exonerated in the U.S. since 1973, the risk of executing an innocent person is very real. This fact alone has led many to question whether any perceived benefits of the death penalty can outweigh the potential for such a grave and irreversible error. Ultimately, this debate forces us to grapple with difficult questions. Can we uphold human rights while also seeking justice for the most serious crimes? Is the risk of executing an innocent person ever acceptable? And in a world where most nations have abandoned capital punishment, is it time for the remaining countries to follow suit? As we look to the future, many are asking, what's the alternative to the death penalty? Life without parole has emerged as a popular option, offering a way to keep dangerous criminals off the streets without resorting to execution. Some states are also exploring restorative justice programs, focusing on rehabilitation and reconciliation rather than punishment alone. Across the United States, we're seeing a gradual shift towards abolition. States like Virginia have recently repealed their death penalty laws, joining the growing list of states that have abandoned the practice. Internationally, more countries are instituting moratoriums or outright bans on executions. Public opinion plays a crucial role in this shift. As awareness grows about the flaws in the system, from racial bias to wrongful convictions, support for the death penalty is waning. Grassroots organizations and high-profile advocates are working tirelessly to educate the public and lobby lawmakers. It's a slow process, but the tide seems to be turning. As more people question the ethics and effectiveness of capital punishment, we may be moving towards a future where the death penalty is a thing of the past. As we wrap up our exploration of the death penalty on this World Day Against the Death Penalty, we're left with many questions. Is capital punishment truly justice, or is it time for a change? The debate continues with compelling arguments on both sides. From the potential for wrongful executions to the question of deterrence, from the cost to taxpayers to the impact on victims' families, there's no easy answer. But one thing is clear, this conversation is far from over. We invite you to share your thoughts and continue this important dialogue. After all, it's through open and honest discussions that we can hope to find a path forward that serves justice while upholding our shared values of human dignity and rights. Power, Pleasure, and Pain. A study of abuse through time. This book provides a detailed examination of how sexual violence and power dynamics have manifested across different historical periods, from ancient civilizations to the modern era. It explores how figures in positions of power used their influence to manipulate and exploit others, showing that the patterns of abuse we see today have deep historical roots. Many people struggle to grasp why abuse of power, particularly sexual violence, persists in modern society. By connecting historical events with contemporary cases, the book offers crucial insights into why such behaviors remain prevalent. The book analyzes infamous cases such as those of Harvey Weinstein, R. Kelly, and Dominique Pellicotte, drawing parallels between them and historical figures. This section highlights how the systemic abuse seen in recent times is not a new phenomenon, but part of an ongoing cultural issue. Through the lens of these modern examples, readers will gain a better understanding of how institutions, wealth, and power have historically shielded perpetrators from justice, contributing to their ability to continue harming others. The book explores the philosophy of libertarianism, particularly through the works of Marquis de Sade, to explain the disturbing ways in which pleasure, power, and cruelty have been intertwined. This provides readers with a deeper philosophical context to interpret modern-day scandals. Unlike other studies that focus solely on historical or contemporary cases, this book uniquely blends both, offering a full spectrum of how abuse is tied to power dynamics. It stands out by making philosophical connections that help readers understand the deeper societal issues at play.